This is my second time recording this because God hates me. I want to merely say that I am sorry, because that whole thing of telling you where tracks today would rank compared to other tracks in previous videos, that's not happening this time, because there's now so many that I'm losing track of which ones I like more than which. And that's the only preface you're going to get. Look, you know where to go if you want to listen to these songs, you know what's linked, you know what I'm doing, you can read the title. I'm thinking of redoing a ranking on the vocal tracks, but for now, let's actually talk about all the ones that came out since my last video, because, wow. Midnight Magica is phenomenal. I don't think I can put into words, in fact, how good a lot of the vocal tracks we've got here are. There is, like, a small issue. Some reason it feels like with this one, the lyrics at the start are maybe crunched, or don't line up with the instrumental as well as I'd like. It's hard to explain, but past the opening few lines, though, which after a while of listening to this over and over don't even bother me, the song really starts to get this amazing, melodic, epic, and yet tragic feeling to it. It has a similar vibe to a song from the Tarja era of Nightwish, or even a song sung by Liv Christine of Leaves' Eyes, who most of you don't know. Now, I don't think it quite matches the peaks of those vocalists, because that's an unfair comparison to make, but I do think it's a really good song. It works as a Guilty Gear song, can't say much for the Pizza Parlor Madonna Mania side of things, but it is really good. The chorus especially bangs really hard. I can really see this alongside some breathtakingly cinematic visuals and all that shit. Yeah, good track. But even a song as good as Midnight Magica could not prepare me for Severed Moonlight. Oh my god! Brandon, are you trying to break all my belts? I don't wear belts. I don't like jeans. But while Midnight Magica had the issue to me where it was mostly exceptional, but there are very few elements that are like small problems, Severed Moonlight is on the side where it don't have those problems. I think this whole song is phenomenal to me. The opening bit that's talking at first didn't really work for me, but the more I listened to it, the more it felt like the opening to a song I'd hear in a concept album. And then once the vocalist goes off, fuck me drunk! I absolutely adore this song. It's hard to put into words how good I think Midnight Magica is. This one is one of the few that might be impossible. If I was making a Brandon Yates album from commissioned tracks, this is one of the few songs that would have to go on by default. I genuinely think nobody would be able to tell this was something I downloaded off of YouTube. This is professional music studio quality, and I'm dead fucking serious. This song is that incredible to me. The vocals, the way they sink into the music, the lyrics, even though I don't know the characters, the sort of story it tells, and the way those notes are hit and get that perfect rhythm that hits the exact cadence to give everything simultaneously the impact of a wrecking ball and the melody and grace of elegance. It just comes together to make a song that is not just so unique, but so fucking good. How many ways can I say a word that is a synonym of excellent while adding the word fucking in front of it for emphasis? Count up how many are possible and pretend that I applied all of them here. Birthright of the Dragon, meanwhile, I think I could probably describe this as one of the Brandon Yates tracks of all time. It's good, I enjoyed it, the few moments Brandon sings Japanese are really cool, but it didn't really stand out to me. Now on re-listen, it did hit a bit harder than the first few times. I think Brandon gets across that vibe of, yeah, I did shit, but also fuck you and die, that the lyrics seem to be giving me is the intention of the matchup. In that regard, excellent job, because it definitely worked. I just sort of felt like this wasn't really a track that stuck with me, but having enjoyed it more on re-listen, maybe I'll give it a few more goes to let it really sink in. Maybe my tune will change. Musical joke. When it came to listening for this ranking, Cold Blood was simultaneously the song I was most excited to revisit, and also most intimidated. Because I remember loving parts of it, and really not vibing with others, and right, I don't like when it sounds very mumbly, and I don't really jive with the kind of weird voice Brandon puts on at points, and on both accounts I think it makes sense and fits the song. They're just things that I'm not too crazy on. When Brandon is going full guttural, almost like a melodic death track, that's fucking wicked, it's awesome. And of course the song is definitely unique and stands out, but these vocals just aren't a thing I've heard in any other Brandon song, but I just don't vibe with it. It feels like it flits between styles a bit too fast for me. I'm not too heavy on when I can't understand the lyrics, and the moments that I fucking love I wish were more of the focus. Hell, I think I'd adore the song if it was just really guttural stuff, and the melodic stuff that shows up mostly at the end. It's definitely not a bad song in my eyes, but it's one that's so different that I think if this is the kind of thing you like, you'll like it, and if it's not, you won't. Kings of Spirits is a song in a style I'm not too crazy about, but I really loved. Unlike the instrumental, where it's just sort of, yeah, that's okay until the song gets into the chorus and bangs harder than me ramming your mum into the mattress, the vocal version works for the whole thing. It has this very relaxed, go with the flow sort of vibe. Like, some fellas talking about how good and awesome they are and the most, yeah, that's how good I am, who are you sort of vibe. Not aggressive, just sort of vibing. And then it builds up into the chorus that brings me chills every time. The vocals complement the amazing instrumental chorus flawlessly. This song is catchier than the common cold. It's so smooth and effortless. It exudes this energy of, I'm barely trying and you're not even close to keeping up, man. It feels just, I don't know what else to say but smooth. And when it suddenly gets hectic at the end, with one of the choruses just coming out of nowhere and just hits hard as fuck, it's cool. The way it ends on the same lyric it began on really makes it seem like, right at the end, something insane happened that made both of the fighters suddenly take the fight, like, truly seriously. And once the two were going all out, it didn't last much longer before they annihilated each other and only one was left standing. It comes out of nowhere, and really does that work out, but here, the abrupt ending really worked. Unbreakable. I predicted this to be getting a vocal track, and I was right. And this song sounds exactly like an anime intro in English. It's a very casual, soft, rocky track that works so well. The carefree, fun first vibe is exactly what I expect from a song that's only purpose is to get kids hyped to watch the show. And it also has those small moments that cut down and feel really more emotional. It's cool. And when the chorus hits, it's amazing. This sounds not just like an anime intro, but the kind of anime intro that will be played in the show itself when the hero suddenly gets the advantage against the main villain of a story arc. This is the kind of song that would be the song of a generation of kids who watched some show before school and became attached to it regardless of the show's actual quality. And it is so fucking catchy. It brings all those good vibes. I can't help but smile with this song. It feels like it captures that feeling of wonder that I had as a child, watching new things that weren't good but I still loved, and turns that feeling into audible bliss. It feels short, but in that sort of no, that's not it, one more listen sort of way, where it doesn't leave you disappointed, but it does leave you wanting to hit the replay button over and over and over and over and over and fucking over again. And you better believe me, when this song came out, it was just this and Seven Moonlight I had on repeat. Despite how much I adored Kings of Spirits and Midnight Magica, these two took over my life for a period of time, and I don't regret a second of it. Anyway, I'll talk about Zero Parts Left in a moment. Just let me re-listen to Unbreakable one more time. Zero Parts Left is a track. Honestly, kind of like Birthright of the Dragon, this one grew on me more on a subsequent listens, but it still feels kind of, This is a pretty standard song. It is good, and I enjoy it, but it's going for a doom and gloom vibe, and I think it only really started hitting me midway through. And I don't know why the second half of the song hit me more than the first half, but I don't know. It's not a track that I remember much about. Starstruck Gunners was already one of my favorite instrumental tracks, so here Brandon comes and makes it a vocal track in a style I don't like. Why do I like it so much then? I only tend to be into these kind of techno vocal songs when it's Eurobeats or something absurdly brutal like Cyclone 9. But Brandon is this master of writing songs in a way that can be a genre I don't like, but then make me like it anyway. It just bangs. It gets that vibe of this war song that is focused on the heroism of a single individual, like the hero of a great war, which I guess fits the character. I can kind of see it with Gunvolt at least. But what might really do it for me is that when the instrumental hits really hard notes, it isn't sung over. So the instrumental gets to hit hard and the vocals get to hit hard without ever encroaching and overshadowing on each other's territory, if that makes sense. The way Brandon composed the song was just stellar, and it was an amazing instrumental that I didn't think even sounded like it was missing anything like vocals, but he made it work. Bloodlust is in a similar boat where I don't think it needed vocals, but now the vocals are so ingrained into me that I struggle to hear the instrumental without hearing the vocals in my head. Like, it starts suddenly, but it hits right away. The vocals are amazing, and they give this really sort of sinister, calculated, creepy monster feeling. Okay, there is a vibe this song gives me, where it feels like, this song gives me the vibe of a monster that is like some malicious entity waiting for you to become your own enemy before it swoops down and ends what's left of you. It's just catchy. It's a really catchy song. It's excellent. There's little bits before Brandon comes into play at the end where he sporadically shows up out of nowhere, and it's just like, it's sudden and very subtle, but it really elevates the song. With that whole monster vibe I was talking about, it gives the impression that there's more than one. You know, there's the one that you know is there, but in the background there's something else, something you didn't realize was there despite feeling its presence and reacting to it. And past the 4-minute mark, which is once you've already lost, that's when you notice it. And that's when you realize you never had a chance to begin with, and by the 4.5 minute mark, it's absolute chills. It's the point you're lost, the point where you see the monster in its absolute totality looming above you, where it truly sets in how hopeless it all was. Throughout it all, the monster wasn't even trying. That's just the vibe I got though. I mean, in terms of battle track, it can also be seen as just the two fighting, and that's the point where the battle reaches its climax, but it gave me a different experience than that, and I enjoy the experience more than that. It's a fantastic track that took one instrumental that I already loved and made it even better. Remnants of the Soul almost feels too short, but this combination of Brandon, Theirwolf, Igiko, and Mara is fucking amazing. This generally sounds like a Ruby no, it sounds better than a Ruby song. It doesn't have the generic soft pop rock vibe I get from a lot of modern Ruby songs that all sound the same and lacking any personality. This has so much personality. This is what I wish Ruby songs were like these days. It's an amazing duet that really sells me on these two going at it. The lyrics, the vocals, the composition, I'm so happy I waited for this version to check it out. Because for as good as the instrumental is, and it is good, this blows every expectation I had out of the fucking water. The two are going at it, and given the length of the song, while it's a bit short, it does perfectly fit for the length of a death battle track. Maybe it's a bit too intense for a death battle track given these two, but I'd also be able to perfectly see when you'd be able to have Soul and Marker interact without the vocals getting in the way. And I can see different scenes where they're hurt and standing back up and they're getting ready for the final clash, and when they're just smashing the shit out of each other. And the guitar solo at the end, I swear that has to be Theirwolf. It feels like that's Theirwolf representing Soul Evans in the track, and this is when Soul is resonating most with Marker. At least to the final clash and all. Of course, Theirwolf I'm pretty sure was there throughout the song, but I think that's when he comes out the most. Or I'm an idiot. Midnight Sleuths still starts suspiciously similar to My Other Self. Wow, I wrote that sentence in a way that I didn't realize how much it would be awkward to say out loud. But it quickly comes to have a different vibe. It's a lot more dramatic and less, I guess, cool and collected. Though it doesn't lose that vibe. It's still some good ass, toe tapping, jazz rocking, sick, nasty, wicked music that I love. Brandon Yates and Kamen Rider W have sort of sold me on jazz rock now when previously I just wasn't into it. And while I'm still not into most of it, I can trust Brandon to sell me on it whenever he dips into the style. This is just not a song I can listen to without my whole body getting into it, which is true for a lot of these songs, but this song feels like it hits that vibe even more. And that one bit where it dips and starts sounding really creepy and how that goes, that's amazing. It suddenly just happens and it's so raw when it comes in. It ramps up from a ballad that sounds super relaxed and fun, and it really reminds you that, yeah, someone's dying tonight. The two are now pissed, they're serious, and it wasn't some explosive transformation, but more like the two just getting dead serious, and the song itself reflecting that tranquil fury. And from then on, the song keeps its jazzy tone while retaining that serious, foreboding feeling of calamity and epicness. It even recontextualizes some of the lyrics to fit the new tone, until the vocals completely peter out and goes into pure instrumental chaos. Then, only one's left standing. Crown Shield Heroes is a good track, but my god do I always forget it exists because I love Unbreakable so much, and it's not like the track is blown out of the water. In fact, if you were to take Unbreakable and see it as an anime intro, Crown Shield Heroes is like the intro to the second season, where the hot take of the community is, I think it's better than the first one, and then a bunch of other people will come in, turning that from a hot take into a 50-50 split in the community. But the people who support Crown Shield Heroes will still say it's a hot take anyway, despite it being a 50-50... I'm getting off topic. But for as much as I like Unbreakable more, what this track has is a lot more brutality, and I really like it. It's really, really good. I love the chorus. I think it's a lot less fun and as in Unbreakable and a lot more serious, and that works for me. It's like two different feelings of heroism, and like one is the guy who saves others from the villain, the other is the guy who saves others from themselves, but they're still the same person. I almost regret liking Unbreakable so much more, because I do think they're neck and neck, and the raw brutality at the end, which sounds like a fucking death metal and black metal street together, gives me life. It's just excellent. The Fight Rages On is of course a rap track, and that is not at all my thing. Brandon can make almost any genre I'm not into work for me, but rap is a bit of a hard sell. That being said, I like Fight Rages On. It's basically a rap battle, but neither combatant takes the other seriously enough to actually get mad. Both have that same kind of, you just ain't worth it vibe. Even when I think they're going bar for bar, it's a bit hard for me to tell. They both feel pretty relaxed, and it gives that sort of, I guess, beat 'em up vibe, if that makes sense. Which, like, yeah, that fits. So while I wouldn't generally go out of my way to listen to Fight Rages On, I definitely think if autoplay threw it at me, I wouldn't click off. Considering the genre, I'd say that's a dub. What can I say about Symbol of Hope? This was for a while my new favorite vocal track from Brandon. Everything about this track just is amazing. It manages to sound both incredibly dramatic, incredibly epic, incredibly heroic, and incredibly dark all together. Brandon and Logan do an amazing job together, the two pulling off a duet between Hajime and Izuku. In fact, it captures my favourite part of this matchup, the potential dialogue between the two within its very lyrics. While at the start it's Hajime and Izuku just talking about themselves and introducing themselves, Hajime will not give up his chance to be an ultimate, and Izuku began with nothing and is also wielding immense power now. Then the two just keep talking, and it just, it's so good. When they're fighting, they basically say they've used up all their power but refuse to die and give up, which just goes into the chorus and it matches them perfectly, and the very end of it goes into essentially a debate between each other what they would be willing to sacrifice and willing to do for the sake of the world. At the end, the two come to a compromise, kind of like Hajime and Izuru at the end of Danganronpa 2, when they basically become a single being. I love everything in this song, the choruses, the bridges, everything. It's sold to me by fantastic vocals. I think Logan and Brandon work together amazingly, especially when they get that combination of guttural and smooth together, and I love that contrast in the song. It all goes so well with the instrumental and creates a very impactful track that feels like it doesn't match exactly either series, but perfectly matches the characters. It's its own thing, its own little musical crossover between the two, and it's pretty amazing. Easily one of my favourite tracks Brandon's ever done, my second favourite vocal track. I could listen to it all day because it dips between different styles at a great pace. It isn't too fast or slow, and matches the tempo of how I see this fight going. The instrumental already was one that I fucking loved, but wow. Wow. I'm amazed it came out this good. Bloodstained Strides. Yeah, holy shit, he got the Metal Gear Rising guy to do the track with him. Awesome, that is genuinely cool. Beyond that though, let's talk about the song's actual quality independent of him getting a really cool name in. I fucking love this kind of track. It's awesome. It's so seamless I couldn't even tell you if I remembered there being an instrumental version at all sometimes. This is the pinnacle of vocal tracks that I never realized needed vocals until I got them. This shit is amazing. It's blood pumping, it's action packed, it's fast as fuck, and it feels like a track I'd hear in the middle of some Platinum Games boss battle, which is fitting. However, I don't have much more to say about the track. I don't know, I really liked it. And I think the action parts are great, the guttural intriguing vocals are amazing, the melodic bit near the end is fantastic, leads perfectly into the conclusion. It's so goddamn stupidly catchy. I don't have much to say about that though. Awakened Sacrifice is my favourite vocal track so far. Everything I wanted from this track delivered perfectly, and everything I said about the instrumental is carried on over here. The melancholic tone is flawless. The song isn't some triumphant battle between heroes, it's a horrible event that the two have to kill each other. At the same time though, they don't really see this as anything else. It's not a good thing that killing people they don't know is so normal to them. Claire laments that she lives in a nightmare, one with no end that she walks and has no choice in. Guts laments that his life is an endless barrage of death and suffering, but both of them end by steeling themselves by mentioning the best parts of their lives. Claire was once forsaken, but she got through that. Guts fought for those he loves, he fought for retribution. Through it all, these two have managed to survive. They refuse to die against each other. They refuse to let the opponent they stand against be the end of their story. But once the battle starts, that no longer matters. They don't speak through their words, but through their actions. They sing together that they hear each other's pain. They feel what the other has suffered through, the way they fight, the way their blade swings, the steel they bring upon each other. As the snow falls, the only sound is that of ringing blades until they fall into darkness. In the instrumental, the point that represents Claire's awakening and Guts' berserker armor sounds like a tragic bestial moment, because it feels like it best matches how these super forms aren't traditional kind of big mega form or Mario power-ups. These are agonizing states that boost their power at the cost of their sanity and control. They lose their minds for them. But with the vocals, the context changes similar to how Tempest Blitz did. It's no longer just tragic because of the forms and what they mean, but for what the forms mean for this fight. They understand each other. There's no hatred between them. There's understanding and a knowledge that only one will walk away. For one of them, this is the end of an endless nightmarish life of death and pain. Yet also the end of the few good things they hold on to in the hellish landscape they live in. They don't necessarily want to kill each other, but they also know they don't have a choice. The lyrics themselves say it. This is a dance of fate, not a battle to murderous and horrific death. It's a clash where whoever wins wins, and the rest is silence. But now, these forms bastardize that. These forms represent all the darkness they've lived through and endured. No longer do they fight for the love and good things they hold dear to them. With these forms, it stops being a battle between those who fight to survive and starts being a battle to the death. Even if they hear each other's pain and true suffering, these forms have made it a battle of agony for them. But the track isn't brutally heavy or violent, it remains melancholic, because Claire and Guts are not the awakened yokai and the beasts of darkness. They see the battle happening within their bodies, but they are not in control. They suffer watching their body act against their will to brutally kill the other. And in the end, the steel rings and the way the song ends, it doesn't end in a way that seems like the fight has ended, but in a way that makes it feel like the fight will never end. This track is one where I do not see it working as the backing track for an animation. I feel as if the track itself is the crossover. This is the fight. You don't slap this vocal track onto an animation and expect it to work, because this is its own thing. It tells a story through the vocals and music that cannot be told through animating it. This is the sort of song I love, that I adore. Because as a massive fan of concept albums, I like being told a story through the unique medium of music. I like being given an experience of a narrative in a way that would not be possible through other means. Being able to listen to this and get a view of what's happening in my own way, in my own interpretation, but an interpretation guided by the intention of the song, is in a way magical to me, and it always will be. I can imagine all of the fight in my head, but this song only tells me the feelings, the tone, the vibe, the emotions that give the fight meaning. I love it so much. The fight itself I can imagine, but the meaning behind it is what the song is telling me, and I can mold that meaning into my interpretation. The questions and gaps in the song aren't a problem for me, they're things that enhance it. It doesn't tell me why they're fighting. I don't know what they are doing in the fight, what abilities they're using, who's winning at any point, or what led to all this. That's for me to determine. What it gives me are the important details. Where the fight is, this is who's fighting, this is who the fighters are. And I'm sure that doesn't read to a lot of viewers, especially those who only listen for the sake of a cool track, and that's fine obviously. But it reads to me. It's the same feeling I get from Symbol of Hope, but much stronger here. And of course, just generally, the track bangs. I love the vocals, I love the lyrics, I love the instrumental, as I've said before. I love the mixing. I think it's a phenomenal track, and I wouldn't want it any other way. I do wonder what it'd sound like with Brandon duetting, but it doesn't matter. I don't want to feel like I'm degrading Logan by wondering about that. Logan did an amazing job. Everyone did an amazing job. Throughout this video, Will of the Drill has fallen to only my 4th favorite track, with 7 Moonlight taking a 3rd, Symbol of Hope taking 2nd, and this taking 1st. And that says a lot about how well Brandon has improved in my eyes. Fantastic job, mate. I can't wait to see what you bring in the future. Devil May Burn is another example of Brandon being better at making Ruby tracks than Rooster Teeth is these days. Don't get me wrong, I loved Ruby's music up to Volume 4, with only a few scant tracks after that reaching the peak since then, like Hero. This track captures the feeling of I Burn, but adds in the brutality of Devil May Cry, and that's fucking awesome. I adore this track. The guttural vocals add so much to I Burn, and combined with the heavy vibes from that, it really pops. While I feel like the intention is for the lyrics to represent the two going all out and talking themselves up and being like, bitch, you can't stop me, without any hesitation, to me it reads as Yang going all in and Nero kind of just telling her to fuck off no matter how hard she gasses herself up. I'm having a hard time if I like that more or not. It's a very good track that sounds like what I wish Modern Ruby was, because this manages to capture the vibe of Ruby without being a generic soft rock track less memorable than the average Nickelback album. But for all the good this track does, there is one thing that irks me, and it's probably not Brandon's fault because of what it is. Plenty of times I listen to Brandon's music in the car, and I know he probably didn't make these songs with the intention to be listened there. But while all of his tracks tend to play really well on the speakers, whenever this track comes in, while good, the drums and percussion seem to really blow out on car speakers. It makes it hard to hear much else beyond the thumping drums. It could always just be my car, and also the fact that this is a song made to be listened to on like a computer or a phone, but it's something I noticed. Also, while the vocals are good, there are times where it's a bit hard for me to understand what's being said. It's not a problem I have with most songs. I can go through a Dimmu Borgir or Cannibal Corpse song and have no issues with knowing what they're saying. Wrongfully. Where the fuck did this come from? This is fucking awesome. I love fantasy power metal, in fact it's my all-time favorite genre of music, bar none, and this has that amazing fantasy sound I get from the likes of Rhapsody, Luca Turilli, Sonata Arctica and whatnot. Sure, I'm not comparing it to those, because that's just not fair, but holy hell I love this. Similar to Awakened Sacrifice and Lost Ice Storms, it sounds like a track where the characters shit-talk each other. Tyler and Brandon do such an amazing job, but Tyler really I think brought the specific vibe I didn't expect. But that was also brought to life through an amazing instrumental that I always liked, but just felt even better to me now, with these lyrics adding to it. The speed, the hecticness, the hatred, the animosity, it really feels like these two just want to kill each other and get on with what they were doing. Like, they don't give a shit about what the other's saying, they just want them to put up their dukes, throw hands, and then they can get back to their thing after killing the cunt. It's really cool, it sounds great, I get this song stuck in my head all the time, I love it, what else can I say? Ultrasonic was a track I kind of expected and wanted to capture that Crush 40 vibe. Did it manage? Not really. I think it's actually too heavy for what I associate with Crush 40. But it does have that sort of heavy attitude rock vibe of the era, which does capture the right energy while also just being really kick-ass. The track really works for these two, with the chorus focusing on speed and power. It's just a non-stop action track that works for these two given it's Dragon Ball and Sonic the Hedgehog. I think it actually managed to apply lyrics to the song that's very much capturing the sound of Solaris Act 2, a track which didn't have lyrics, really well, and quite seamlessly. Not everyone managed to pull that off as seamlessly as Caleb Hyles, but this managed to do it quite well. I think some of the moments where it dips down are maybe a bit more awkward with the vocals than the original instrumental, but that's a really minor gripe for what is definitely a really impactful and heavy speed rock track. Catch Up and Flush Down is a track I think you need to listen to maybe 4 or 5 times to really let it sink in. This track is literally just Condiment King and Toiletator talking shit to each other, while making puns and jokes about condiments and toilets. And Brandon went super hard for this track for no reason, and I love that. For a matchup that teeters between lame and epic, I think epic is the right way to go. And he captured it so damn well. I mean, Mike, what the fuck is this? The amount of puns and just things that aren't even threatening but are used as threats anyway is amazing. What do I even say? This is the vocal track equivalent to Explosion in E minor, which if that gets a vocal track, I don't even know what I'll do with my life anymore. Couples Night Out. Fucking amazing. Furukuchi Mana is amazing, and I love her voice and the way she plays off Brandon, and he's just great too. I love the brutality of this track and how much personality it has. I fucking hate when people spit on vocals like these because it's just shrieking. It's not shrieking. What I do when I sing in parody songs on Ruby Bridge is shrieking. This is singing, and it's great, and I love the personality behind it. The little pause for Joker and Harley's banter at the start was amazing. I think the chorus is just so excellent and catchy. I fucking love it. There's not much to dissect in my opinion with this track when it comes to my enjoyment. It's a duet duetting against the same duet, and that's pretty cool. The brutality these two bring is amazing, and I love this kind of music. Taking a death/black metal growl and cry and melding it with a melody and making it sound rhythmic and smooth is always magical to me. I love bands like Cradle of Filth and Dimmu Borgir who can pull it off, and I love it here too. Especially because unlike those bands, for the most part, Brandon includes moments of just his normal voice, and Minus too, and it sounds amazing and contrasts really well. It's a fucking banger, and that's all there is to it for me. Alright, we're done with vocals, but before we get to the instrumentals proper, I'll talk about the two that I commissioned, because I don't know how to rank them without bias. Legendary Fury was a gift to Biff, and he never really replied, so I'm terrified he actually didn't like it, which oof. Legendary Fury I think got what I wanted basically down pat. It hit the right vibe of an orchestral rock song that matches the themes of Ryuga and Tai Lung well and combines them perfectly. The chanting is there without completely overtaking the track and leaning too far into Ryuga. The track progresses pretty much perfectly and captures the exact feeling I wanted. It's basically perfect for me, so obviously I can't rank it because it'd just be this is exactly what I wanted, so it wins. Double the Riders is in a similar boat. The sort of jazzy, smooth yet intense rock vibe fucking bangs. Brandon knocked it out of the park and made it so catchy and stylish, capturing the vibe of Double's opening without sounding exactly like it, giving it its own flair that really matches with Ryoma, and giving us of course the drop when they get serious. Extreme and Lancer Ryoma come out, and they start going harder, leading back to the jazz for the final clash. Also, the beginning leading to the song is so unreasonably badass and epic, which I didn't expect, but it fucking works. This whole track fucking works for me. I love it. Brandon really did my two commissions justice, and I can't be happier. Okay, finally we can rank fucking instrumental track. What's it been, like 1,000 years since I started this video? And at the very bottom we have Heart of Darkness? I remember liking this one more. Not saying it's bad, I think it's a pretty nice orchestral track. I like whenever the piano takes center stage, it feels like it has the sound of a Final Fantasy matched with the tempo of a Kirby track, and that's awesome. The transitions from calmer to more aggressive sporadically are nice to break it up, and overall I do think it's a good orchestral song. I just feel like maybe it's missing something, some oomph, or maybe more of those piano moments, lyrics. I don't know what it is. I first didn't like this song, then I really liked it, and now I'm down to just sort of neutral. Maybe my opinion is poised to change the more I listen to it, and I'll never settle on a solid opinion for the track, who knows? Because it feels weird to have it down here when it's like a B-rank track to me. So it's good. Nobody's Perfect. I'm not feeling Kingdom Hearts tracks right now, am I? I do like Nobody's Perfect. I think it matches Kingdom Hearts Orchestra and the Dragon Ball Rock really well. But the whole time I felt like I was waiting for it to give me something else, something more exciting and unique, but it never really came, if that makes sense. I don't know, it's definitely good, just nothing that really captured me. Nothing. We Are Kaizoku. I really couldn't explain what it is about this track that makes me so uninterested. I can pick out things I like, I can catch musical references, I can notice all these little things that are neat, but overall the package is one I have little to say about. It's just kind of, a track. It sounds almost like maybe a bit like a Volume 1 track, which I say knowing that I fucking love some Volume 1 tracks even now. It just isn't the most exciting song to me. It's not one I find rather meh-inducing like the ones under it, but it's just one I sort of shrug towards. It's fine. Chima Forever. A very different kind of track, more in the vein of the tribal style of Gods of Combat. It's definitely a striking track with its focus on percussion over anything guitar related, and the mixture of chanting and what I think is the occasional woodwind instrument or something gives it the vibe of a song you'd hear in like an actual Black Panther film, and something that could be heard diegetically during the fight if this was some kind of ceremonial battle between the royals of Wakanda and the Lion Tribe. So it's not bad. Date with the Devil. While definitely a solid track, I feel like Date with the Devil is missing something. Vocals maybe? I don't know, it sounds a bit empty at points. It certainly has a nice beat and all that, it is fairly catchy sometimes, but I don't know what more to say when I feel like the song is missing something. Faster Than Light, the highest ranking Kingdom Hearts track so far. I actually feel awful having them all this low. Yeah, the track is decent. I think it has plenty of good bits that I really enjoy, but there's just something about the track I find uninteresting. I don't know what it is. It's definitely not a case of a track being bad at all. It's just a case of the track isn't one I can remember much about soon after listening to it. I definitely enjoyed it. I mean, I put it over like Chima Forever and stuff, which I had nothing but good things to say about, so I can definitely remember I really got the vibe. But I guess if I can't even remember what my problems or positives were with the track, it can't rank too much higher. Maximum Chaos! You know, I'm actually kind of underwhelmed by this track. I guess I sort of expected more of a high-speed take on Chorus of Carnage, and yeah, I did hear Chorus of Carnage in there, and you know, I can respect the more subtle implementation. That song focuses more on Carnage's slasher-killer vibe, so having that be secondary to the pure chaos definitely fits. I also find the small pause that I swear is a reference to the It's Raining You're Bleeding scene pretty good. But come on, Carnage, really gonna be that insensitive and say that to a girl, you absolute bastard? Anyway, even taken on its own merits, while I enjoy the chaos of this track and how high speed and intense it is, it didn't ever really create that hook that brings me into a lot of these tracks. It's still definitely good though. I have to say that at the end of every one of these, because people are gonna think I hate them, I imagine. Revelation of Suffering. There's nothing wrong with this track, but something about it isn't quite hitting me the way I'd like it to. There are moments I enjoyed, and a lot of them I liked overall. I like the track overall. I know it takes some elements from 13th Halloween, a track I adore, and I do like what it is going for, but for some strange reason, it feels kind of unmemorable for me. I think it might be because 13th Halloween had this smooth, buttery finesse to it that gave off the rhythm of a good chase sequence flow, while Revelation of Suffering is more discordant and chaotic to match the idea of a chase sequence where the person running can handle themselves, but is also running from a larger horde of individuals as opposed to just one. And while in that context the song definitely works better for me than initially, I just can't seem to get into it as much as I'd like. Still, I mean, there's nothing wrong with the track, I just don't think it works as well for me as I'd like it to, especially given how much it pulls from a track that I love. The Tragedy of Rebellion. Aside from the nice majestic vibe and how surprisingly low-key it is for a monster of a character like Hunter Zolomon, it's surprisingly just sort of okay. There are some segments I really enjoyed, but for the most part I have little to say about this. I think it's a solid enough track with nothing too stand out to me. Blazing Awakening certainly has a few cool segments. I particularly like the piano that I think is around the 2-minute mark and anything going on around the 2:40 mark, but aside from that, it's not something I find super exciting. It's a fun sword fight track, and that's about it. Hello there, Hokage! I wish I could explain why this track isn't too exciting to me. I love the combination of Star Wars and Naruto motifs, they work great. I love the guitar solo there, was able to bust out. Bleh, got tongue-tied for a second there. And I love plenty of it, but for some reason the overall track doesn't stick with me much. I really don't know why. Also, part of me kind of wishes this was Obi-Wan versus Iruka, because, Iruka? Is it Iruka or Iruka? I don't remember. But because I love Naruto, the Abridged Spoof comedy series, that the Lil Karibo one, and Hokage just sort of came to mind when I read the title. Over 30 Billion. Aside from its amazing name, it's generally a pretty standard track, but quite a good one. It's a bubbly, fun, lighthearted song that, despite some hardcore moments on the guitar that made the Dragon Ball Super vibes, is really more of a classic Dragon Ball track with how childish it is. While having great moments and a pretty catchy chorus, it isn't anything I consider too special, but it's strangely both exactly what I'd expect from the matchup, and also nothing I'd expect at all, if that makes sense. Divine Purple. A good, if standard track. I don't know, it was decent, but it didn't hit any particular high notes for me. It's a standard, very good Brandon Yates song. Destiny Calls. There are some parts of this track I think are absolutely amazing, but for the most part, it's just, yeah, pretty solid. Nothing crazy, but those few moments do elevate it over what came on before. I have nothing more to say though. Brainwaves. This is certainly a pretty fun track. I think it's got that whimsical, cartoon, emotional track vibe, which definitely works for it. It sounds like a battle track, but also sounding like it wouldn't be out of place in more emotional scenes sometimes, which is always a plus. A track that can pull off multiple things at once is always a good track, and this track definitely pulls that off. That said, that's all I have to say about it. I like the track, it's pretty good toe tap and fun, and that's about it. Shadow on Mars. A lot of Brandon Yates tracks follow a similar feeling for me. I like most of it, but one segment in particular stands out, or there's a main chorus that really hits me. That's the case for a lot of songs, generally especially amongst those I like, beyond even Brandon Yates. I feel like Shadow on Mars is like the opposite. The entire thing stands out, but there's no point in the song that stood out within its own context that hit me. That said, you can probably tell from the fact that this isn't exactly low that I really dug it. I thought this track was really good. It was just hitting all the right notes, pun I bet I've used before, for me, and really got me into it. It didn't have any one particular segment that stood out, and thus it's kind of hard to talk about because it's more of just a vibing thing where the whole thing worked. But I'll leave on saying it's definitely a good track. I'll probably be listening to it a lot more in the future. Fairly Bizarre. I feel a lot about this track the way I feel about Shadow on Mars. It's good, I enjoy it overall, but nothing stands out to me. But I enjoy the beat a bit more than Shadow on Mars, I guess. I like the consistency more. But I enjoy the peaks of Shadow on Mars better. So I guess it's even. I don't know, what can I say about that? I don't know what I can say about it, I'm not a doctor. The Path That Never Was. This one made me feel things, but I'm not entirely sure what they were. There are a lot of elements I think are great. The melding of melody and heaviness is something I'll always like, and the flow between melody and power taking over feels very intentional. Like it's reflecting the flow between these organizations' somewhat sorrowful elements and their drive to succeed. It's a strangely hopeful track given who these groups are, but maybe that's kind of the point. Their hope is mixed with this heaviness because it's a hope steeped in bloodshed and pain, one that is inherently flawed in that way. Maybe that was the point, but that really works for me either way. I can't say much was super memorable to me, which is what's throwing my feelings out of whack, but it'd be a blatant lie to say that I didn't get a kick out of this. Tomorrow Will Blossom. You know, this is the Toho track of all time in the best way possible. This sounds like it'd slot right into a bullet hell game in a 3-stage battle that shifts the person you're gunning down's patterns every time. It's actually really cool in that regard, and I think it matches Toho exceptionally well. Almost too well. It almost feels to me like this isn't that unique, strangely, but it's not unique for the same reason that it is unique amongst these tracks. Oh, everything tastes of lead now. Banished Masters. For an army track, which is very clearly an army track, there's definitely a stranger feeling of isolation and melancholy with this one that really makes it stand out. I think this track is super memorable. It has a fantastic space sci-fi vibe that matches the series, a heavy percussion and beat that matches the scale of the fight, but an important element of sadness and slow moments that give it a character. Beyond just an army fight, this is a track for specifically these groups that gives it an identity that I really like. And the fact that it ends on that sad note is also fantastic. It doesn't end triumphantly or bombastically, it ends with an elegy to those that died in the battle. Awesome. Calamity at the Door. Hey look, it's that episode of Season 10 of Death Battle. Yeah, this track is fun. It's not a battle track, like, at all. It's more of just a fun crossover track where these two at best are having a friendly fight and not anything serious. But it captures an innocent and fun vibe. It definitely doesn't have the same magic to me as Little Shining Light, but it's still really good. Task Force Ghost. Task Force Ghost accomplishes the insane task of capturing the vibe of an extremely generic background track from a AAA first-person American US military shooter game, without sounding generic and forgettable. In that regard, the track's excellent. It gives the vibe of music that tends to be forgettable and unremarkable, but makes it memorable and awesome. It's not my favorite track because this style of music doesn't always tend to work for me, but this one works pretty damn well. I really like the way it ramps up without losing its identity, and that's something it has that most tracks in this style of those kinds of games don't have. It has an identity. And yeah, it's pretty damn good because of that. I really like this one, honestly. Blackened Spirit, Shadowed Heart. This track isn't the most memorable, so maybe it's my fairy tale bias jumping in here, but I like it a lot. It's a good, consistently heavy enough hard rock instrumental that has plenty of moments that slow down and sound like traditional fantasy style music to match the vibe. What more could you want? That's Fairy Tail's entire musical style. I don't know about Legend of Dragoon, but I also don't care. I'm in this for Fairy Tail, and it's a good track in that regard. Lights Off. Normally when a track leaves me unsure, what I like to do is leave it open and listen to some others, then come back to it later. In this track's case, I was still left kind of unsure for a few listens. I can't necessarily say it stuck the landing in all the ways with me, but it didn't crash at all. I really like the low-key tone of it. It's very relaxed and casual, but that wasn't going to push it high enough. And then randomly I started hearing these like unsettling whispers in the background of the track, and the guitars came into swing, and I got into it. The track was great at points. It didn't get me everywhere I wanted, but I think you can tell from where it is that I really dug when it hit me. Strings Attached. Dark, slow, unsettling? That's what I expect for these two. It's a track that matches its characters perfectly, giving us a more slow and methodical sounding battle, with an underlying chorus of darkness and foreboding terror that goes so well with the undead thing going on with these two and the Puppet Master vibe. It maybe goes on a little bit long, I don't know, it sort of felt like it was dragging a little by the end, but it's not that big a problem. It's a slower track for a slower fight, so it's a bit longer, that's fine. I enjoyed the overall tone. It's like an anime horror battle, which don't tend to be things that come together very often. A lot of anime horror I've seen tends to just be regular anime, but the brightness is down and there's a shitload of blood and gore. But this feels like more traditional horror mixed with anime. It feels unsettling, unnerving, like it's getting under your skin. How fitting, I like that. Trapped Within Despair. Definitely a track that takes a sister location philosophy of having a similar vibe, but different discordant segments throughout. Maybe discordant is the wrong word and a bit harsh, but it definitely feels like there's segments to this song more than most, and I like most of them. Hell, at the very end, I can even see the Danganronpa intro sequence type animation playing for Junko and William with their titles and all that. Which doesn't sound like a fight, and yeah, I can't really see this as a fight in my head with a little girl swinging a baseball bat at a big rabbit robot, but I can get the vibe I want from FNAF in this and a bit of Danganronpa thrown in. The first segment, which goes on for like 20 seconds, is one that I feel repeats the most and is pretty good. The next 30-odd segment sounds like a tense chase sequence and very pounding. The next 20 seconds sounds like Infotron was brought in. I almost had to check that they weren't. And it sounds the most FNAF and Danganronpa of the segments. The only part that doesn't work for me is maybe around the 130 mark, which is extremely similar to the earlier bit, but maybe it's just my ears playing a trick on me. It just sounds a bit more high-impact anime fight than slow-paced, grungy faux horror that I expected. Still, this is a great track with amazing moments in it. It's very good. Birth by Exile. Holy moly! A Kingdom Hearts track that really stuck the landing in this volume. The first one, and not the last. This track is awesome, having a very graceful fantasy feeling that stuck with me. I really enjoyed it, especially the softer pausing segments that felt more emotional and characterful. Less about the battle and more about how the characters were feeling about the battle, and it made the heavier sections pop a lot more. The ending also, of course, works extremely well, rising up away from the more melancholic character pauses into a more triumphant song, that of course, given this ends in death, cannot stay triumphant. There's a feeling of underlying tragedy that pervades this track, but it doesn't really hit until the end, when that's the final note you hear. What is going to last throughout the battle is not the moments of action, but the moments of emotion, experienced by the combatants and carried onwards by the winner into the future. And that's cool. Blackout Action Tactics. The ending really made this track for me. The whole track is generally pretty good, I don't see much wrong with it. I like the incorporation of that classic Batman theme, and the overall vibe is very fitting, but it certainly isn't a battle track at all, it's a stealth track. This is music that plays when you're going across gargoyles in Arkham City, though maybe a bit more intense. It definitely can work for a battle, even if I don't think that's where it's at its strongest, but, you know, what I think this could work best for is not a versus animation, but an official crossover. And I do think in this matchup's case, there is a distinction. A versus battle is just a fight, while an official crossover to me sounds like the two fighting while trying to go after a single shared objective. Which I say knowing that's exactly what Snake vs. Sam was doing, but that's a different era of death battle. Shut up! In this day and age, a 3-minute fight, it definitely would not end up like that if this became an episode. But this song feels like it fits a pseudo-fight, pseudo-chase sequence. Like, I can imagine the objective they're both going after is a person. Snake's trying to kill them, and Batman is trying to stop Snake and capture the person. There's quiet moments in the talk, there's action moments for Batman grappling around the area, and then there's that ending. Wow, it just really starts building up at the 2:30 mark with that choir-esque chanting that so often accompanies Batman. And then comes the explosion that just sounds so fucking haunting and epic. Some would say it's a bit too, I guess, horrific a sound for Batman, but that's the point. It sounds like it fits the vibe of what criminals think of when he shows up, that fear and terror. This is shit I could hear in an actual Batman movie as his main theme's main section that plays throughout the movie whenever he breaks through a glass ceiling or through a window to come after some criminals. It's really good and I like it. And writing and explaining it made it jump up a few places. Unforgiving Justice. Unforgiving Justice is really good at what it does, and what it does is extremely grungy and in your face. This song sounds exactly like a mixture of strangely ambient music you'd hear in a scene involving these two, and a classic anti-hero theme song. This sounds exactly like what I could imagine an early 2000s anti-hero movie starring both of these two in a crossover would sound like. And that's definitely a good thing. I think that's really cool. That's really all I have to say, because I think summing it up that way kind of just means I don't need to explain anything else, because you either know what I mean, or you don't, and you should just listen to the track. Fear the Worst. I have to question why a track with these two has moments where it sounds so heroic. Yeah, I know Terumi pretended to be a hero, and I know Sinestro began as a hero, but that's still weird. Anyway, those moments are few and far between. The rest of it has a fittingly sinister undertone to it. There are slow moments that I can imagine being filled with the two never shutting the fuck up and talking shit, or creating what they fear most against each other. That's pretty neat. and I quite like it. I think it definitely matches the spacey, cosmically all over the place feeling of Lanterns, while blending with the Blazeby style really well. Hope for Sin. I mean, if you want, personally, I don't think we need Sin, Kiski, and Death Battle. Anyway, yeah, Hope for Sin is good. Of the ones that I have little to say about, this is one of the higher ranking ones so far. I mean, it's the highest so far, but it's one of the highest in general. I think it's just a kick-ass Blazeby Guilty Gear track that probably sounds like it's getting vocals, but don't quote me on that. You done shitload of fuck. This one's pretty fun, but I really don't know what to say about it. I just thought it was really good, so yeah. Invitation to Pyroland. I really didn't get what this track was going for initially, though it did work. But when I read the description, the idea of it kind of being from the perspective of Pyro and less playful and childish really started to make sense to me. The bits of horror and mayhem obviously being the moments we stop seeing the fight from his perspective and start seeing what's really happening. But if we're being honest, anyone who knows Bowles knows that this kind of fits him too. Nobody likes him for his fire-shooting killer parts, they like him for being a fun character who's really kind and nice despite how he comes across. So in that regard, the playful cheery tone also fits him as if he's playing along with Pyro's internal view of the world. And to that regard, it definitely does work. It's a good fun track and I really like what it's going for. A Destined Fantasy. Very atmospheric and perfect at capturing the sci-fi and fantasy vibes at the same time. That said, while I really like it, I think the orchestral nature really works and I can listen to it for ages, I don't know what else to say about it. The Word Rings Out. I think this track definitely has a really fun vibe to it. It sounds like a Hollywood film score theme for a crossover between these two, which would play not during their inevitable fight scene, but when they team up to defeat the bad guy. Like, the fight scene with these two sounds like it would play some hip-hop song that's trending at the time. This song sounds like what would play during a great scene of them teaming up, and I like that. It's a fun feeling, it's very jovial, childish in the best way. It has rises for when they team up, falls for when they start to fail, and rises back up when they truly start working together to overcome the crossover villain. Very solid. Rip and Terminate. If you want to ask, Nemesis, would you have commissioned Destroyer vs Iris if you won the raffle? The answer is yes, but I didn't, so we have Rip and Terminate instead. Now for me personally, this took a while to get going. I kind of thought it just sounded like a less good Covenant with Hell, and I do think Covenant with Hell is still better, but around the minute and a half mark, this really nice little synth keyboard bit comes in playing those Terminator theme notes, which goes so well with the Doom music when they're together. It marries the beautiful yet tragic sound of the Terminator theme with the heavy and dirty sound the Doom tracks tend to have. They mix in so well, like the instrumental equivalent of whenever Brandon does the guttural vocals in a duet with someone else. I think that combination of vibes is what sells this track to me and makes it sound special. I really like it, and that and the 3-minute mark where it starts getting even heavier and more full on, because of course a good third act musical shift is appreciated, especially when the Terminator theme drops in too and ends up being the last bit. I think it was a great track, and a really good one for raffle winner, because this is not a matchup you'd want as anything other than a Brandon track, but it works so well as a Brandon track. Explosive. I think the best way to describe this track is vibin'. It just has that sort of grungy, I'm a dick who's gonna ruin your life and this is my jam vibe to it. Like, it feels right for these two. It's not as explosive as I think a lot of people would imagine, funnily enough, but it definitely fits these two better than just raw explosiveness. Just the two going around blowing stuff up, not giving a damn, that's what I feel from this song. And it's enjoyable. It's another track I don't have too much to say about, but it has the perfect vibe to match these characters. Though let's be honest, half of you don't actually care what I have to say and you just want to see where your favorite tracks rank. Believe It's Real. For one thing, I hear Shonen Showdown in here, and this basically makes it a big 3 Royale track, so that's pretty cool. Other than that, I can safely say it's a really fun track. I think it definitely leans more into Naruto style of instrumentation, but I don't mind that, I'm Asian, I love that shit. The track definitely sounds like a Naruto fight first and foremost, and I'm not getting too much Luffy, but I can kind of hear it when it sounds, less Naruto-esque, and I assume that's the One Piece. Yeah, it's good. It really just kind of sounds like Shonen Showdown, but leaning heavier into Naruto sometimes. And yeah, I do like Shonen Showdown, but I feel like I wanted maybe a bit more One Piece to make it sound more distinct, but again, I'm probably just missing it. Still, it's a very solid track, and around the 2-minute mark, it gets this very adventurous, good vibes feel, like the two are really enjoying the fight in that moment, not caring about before or after, but the now. Also, yes, the name is fucking brilliant. Masters of Evil. This sounds like a Star Wars track, I'm gonna be honest. I can see this blasting in like fucking Revenge of the Sith. Anyway, I think this is a very good track. It's going with something different, it's definitely slower paced and more atmospheric, more of a scene-fitting scene than a traditional Versus track, and I like that a lot. It sounds closer to something you'd hear on the OST of a motion picture than the OST of a fighting game, which a lot of Versus tracks tends to sound like. The slower pace builds a feeling of tension, like this isn't a fight, but a power display between the two. They're not throwing hands, they're staring each other down, getting a read on their opponent and their abilities. It's really good as an imposing motion picture OST-esque track. Bullet to the Heart. I know I've been a bit harsh on Kingdom Hearts tracks today, but here we go, here we are, damn fine. The combination of Kingdom Hearts and Mega Man makes for a surprisingly cohesive, melancholic yet futuristic and hopeful ditty that is pretty damn fun. I adore how good these elements sound coming together, it makes for a really, really good track. Yeah, that's all I got. Next, G3N. Okay, I had such high hopes for this and it delivered. I love these Mega Man Sonic tracks, though that should be no surprise given what they have to draw from. This is an absolute banger that just hits and hits and hits. It's a fast-paced, very fun, very groovy techno track that matches these two perfectly. While maybe not quite as heavy as I'd want for an Omega track, it matches the series perfectly. It can sound intense, it can sound fun, it can sound wild, it can sound epic. It's a great track, and that's pretty basic, but that's why it's so good to me. The Way of the Blade. I had to listen to this a few times, but eventually, I came around to it. There's a lot of bits I find a bit generic, but when it gets good, it really gets good, and thankfully, those aren't few and far between bits. They're plentiful enough to get this track stuck in my head, whether I like it or not, and I do like it, so no harm, no foul. Bury the Moonlight. It's dark and heavy, slow and brutal, but it has moments that are really fast and high-paced to sound perfect for a vocal chorus, I wonder. It's a really awesome track, that's for certain, and when it gets fast, it just keeps accelerating, like it can't stop anymore. It sounds like the track to a hectic, intense boss fight, and then out comes the guitar solo from nowhere that's fucking sick. I can totally see this playing for a Virgil boss battle in a future DMC game, and I mean that in the best way. This has to be one of my favorite guitar solos in any Brandon Yates track too. This shit is intense, I can feel the pace of it. Just so goddamn wicked. I was already loving the vibe of this track from the first half, and then the second half decided to go as hard as possible and become pure titanium heavy metal. Just awesome, that's the key word on this one. And that last 30 odd seconds, just so beautiful. Like, this is either the final one-stroke duel, or this is 30 seconds after the duel has ended and the loser falls to the ground defeated and they have their final words. Just beautiful. Rings and Evil Unbound. I agree with the thought that 7 Rings Unbound would have been a much cooler title, but as it is, Rings and Evil Unbound is a good track. And I quite like it, but I don't really know why. It's hard to say beyond it really fucking vibes with me, and I'm pulled into the song. But as you might have noticed in these videos, sometimes I struggle to articulate my words, and this is one of those cases. I guess I just like the vibe and style it goes for. Really no shock Pokemon to Sonic go well together like this. Never Seen Before. Is this placement me being sold to that Godzilla's theme is harder to hear than the Power Rangers theme? Absolutely. But it's still a total banger that is basically just a heavier, slower instrumental of the Power Rangers theme. So it's still good. Actually, wait a minute, I'm listening to this again. Is that the fucking Godzilla Unleashed theme making up the main riff? Holy fuck, never mind, this track is based. The Spectral Pain. You know, I have no idea if this was intentional or not, but this song feels so different to the other Shepard tracks, and in a great way. Humanity's Last Hope sounds very gloomy and spacey. Galactic Commanders sounds heroic. This one sounds a lot grittier and darker. It's like Shepard's themes are adapted depending on the outlook of his opponent, that's really cool. The combination of Mass Effect music with Metal Gear's is made really well and works pretty good. I'm not sure how I feel about the chanting given these two, but I can also understand the whole this is how people see them from the outside, these legendary, almost mythic figures in their world due to their impossible accomplishments. It does work from that perspective. I just didn't expect it for the matchup. But I think what it does great is sounding distinct from the other Shepard tracks, while also sounding perfectly in line with them. I guess this is the Renegade track to Galactic Commander's Paragon or something. It definitely sounds a lot sadder and darker than the others, and I really like that. All the tracks together make for a great sort of trilogy. Galactic Commanders is the fun space commanders who save the universe and embody heroism and the fun silly moments of Mass Effect. Humanity's Last Hope is a song that matches the great expanse of space, the emptiness and the enigma, the feeling of infinite distance that you look out upon in the darkness of space. It's a song that best reflects Shepard when he just takes the time to reflect on everything, to think about what he's up against and stand against it anyway. And the Spectral Pain reflects the darker side of things, the undeniable corruption, muck and cruelty of their worlds, and how Shepard fights against it, but it never seems to end. He's just fighting a losing war against these things, but he has to try. The tone works to make these three really great together. And of course on its own, Spectral Pain is a fantastic track, quite heavy and melancholic, but intense and science fiction without being too out there sounding for Metal Gear. Great stuff. Bad to the Bone. Look, anyone who expected a track for this matchup to be any different to this is kidding themselves. It's a fun, silly, goofy jazz track that's full of charm and whimsy. It's just fun to listen to, and it's fun to imagine this playing alongside the two honestly being more dangerous to themselves than each other. There's always a part of me that's pictured this fight being a showcase of utter incompetency and occasional surprising success that's usually not even intentional. This track gives me that vibe. What else could I ask for? It's Giovanni Potage versus Papyrus. It's perfect for that. Adventure's Dawn. I did not expect this to go so hard, but I will accept that as a Skylanders commission. And then there's no complaints, because Skylanders always goes hard. Fuck you. This track is just exceptional. Not only is it shockingly grandiose and epic, but it also manages to keep up this perpetual energy that makes it feel faster than it is. It's a slow track, as you'd expect, but it doesn't feel slow. It definitely feels like a more methodical battle. The two characters who aren't high-speed fighters take their time to decimate their opponents and all that. But it's really cool, and it feels faster than it is, and like a high-stakes conflict. I quite like this track. It's just overall really good. Reflect on the Mast. Don't say it, don't think it, don't say it, don't think it, don't say it, don't think it. That's what the point of the Reflect on the Mask is a very good track, if another kind of standard Persona track. Though despite that, it has its own identity. It feels less jazzy and more rocky, which I appreciate. It also has a more epic and cosmic vibe that keeps the smooth and relaxed feeling that Persona tracks tend to have without losing anything. It has an identity to it, despite the fact that I can hear Luminous Heart and I think Phantom's Game in it. And I think probably other parts too that I haven't noticed yet from Joker's track list. It definitely feels more like an epic boss battle of cosmic importance, instead of the standard kind of street brawl with magical technology and stuff vibe that I get from Persona matches. It's definitely a lot more interesting, and I really like it. Also, is that a fucking xylophone in the track, or are my ears playing tricks on me? Bloody Cataclysm. This was already a pretty kick-ass track that was going to get pretty high, and then the guitar solo hit that it jumped a few spaces because of that. Bloody Cataclysm is kind of perfect, at least for Elton. It sounds like a solid fighting game track that carries with this feeling of greater meaning and significance that fits Elton's role in the wider series as a character who has shown up in multiple parts of the Nasuverse in different incarnations and even crossovers with other franchises. He really works for me and what I'd want in an Elton song. I can't say much for Coriander over there, but overall it's a very good track and that guitar solo kicks all of the asses. Red Lead Redemption. It wasn't much, but there was some Trigun OP in there I think, and that was enough to bump it up. Low-key top 10 anime openings. Also, where is Vash's index finger? Red Dead Redemption doesn't really have exactly the amount of smooth western sound I'd want from a Vash song, but it still managed to be a pretty good song. I liked it when it got into that western feel the most, but it's overall really nice and intense. Not quite all that I wanted, but look how high it is. It's clearly doing something right. And what it's doing right is like the start and the middle where it's super westerny. Not huge on the chorus, I think that strays a bit far away from that, but the rest is all really good. The feeling is neutral. Amazing name aside, if you know anything about these two, this track is exactly what you'd think it'd be. And that's not a bad thing, because my first thought for this matchup track was awesome, and I'm glad it was correct. It gives off this nice, cheery little ditty. You could hear this as the main theme of some fun high school slice of life show or some fun fantasy adventure series. It's playful and also wonderful. It matches the outward exterior that these two give off. And then suddenly, from out of nowhere, it blindsides you with sudden harshness, a vicious pace, a discordant feeling of dread and terror, as if your entire reality and perception crumble and shattered like glass. It goes down into a slow beat as you realize what is truly underneath. You feel the chill in your spine as it gradually slows and slows until there's barely any music playing at all. A few lone keys amidst the silence. But no, it's okay, the fun music's back. But now you know there's more to this than it seems. It matches the two perfectly. And after the initial playfulness is interrupted, it seems like it gradually stops trying to pretend. It feels like from then on, the chaos and malignity is trying to burst out from underneath the playful exterior, as it keeps pushing up against the facade harder and harder. It's so good. Like, what else would you want for this matchup? If you think there's a better way to do this matchup as a track, then you're kidding yourself. The monster was you. Brandon's tracks tend to be a good way for niche matchups to be given some love, but also a good way to promote matchups that someone loves. With that in mind, going into this, I was sort of jokingly huffing the fumes of, "Grrr, the Flood versus the Thing, that's not the Flood versus the Tyranids, looks like some commissioner is propping themselves up for a smacked bottom." But thankfully, the track does a great job of feeling like the Flood versus the Thing and not like anything else. And I don't mean via the usage of musical leitmotifs of either character or franchise, I mean the vibe and composition. The Flood versus the Tyranids would have to be a very brutal, visceral, wildly manic track. But this, while maybe not feeling perfect for how I tend to picture the Flood, does work fantastically with the Thing, and does go well with the vibe the Flood gave off in the very first Halo game. If not the other two, where they kind of just became a big swarm, at least from what I remember. The horror was a lot more there with the first encounter of the Flood in Halo 1, and this track matches that and the atmosphere of the Thing, capturing a very low-key and quietly subtle but underlyingly sinister and uncomfortable feeling of confusion and disorder. That is one of the most pontificatingly pretentious ways I've ever described one of these tracks, I'm sure. Basically, I think it fits for a song that gives the vibe of chaos, but in an enclosed and confusing way, where you're not sure what's what, what's where, how something is, what it is, and all that. And it's pretty catchy at points too. I can't say for certain that I can see this as a fight with this track, but what I can see is this track playing when a few people go through some dingy crashed ship and come across the Thing, and then the Flood also show up and they get caught in the crossfire of the Thing fighting this army of Flood, and the people aren't sure what's happening, they're just trying to survive and escape. Ending presumably with a calm moment where after last seeing the Thing and Flood fighting in the midst of fire, the lone survivor of the humans is calm, takes a deep breath, stands up, and we see something in the shadows behind them before it cuts to black. Don't turn around. As Logic rebels, what a weird track in a great way. This track has a very different vibe to a lot of the others. While the constant chanting keeps a feeling of grandiose intensity, something to really remind you of the scale we're working with, the overall vibe is one of more simultaneous disinterest and curiosity. These two have no idea that the other one is at the level they are, and they're sort of playing the field here, kind of grooving, going for their lower level stuff at first. They have no clue what they're fighting, and it has this abnormal feel the whole time where nothing is quite as it seems. It really sounds like a track I can imagine in a trippy Yumin Echo situation. And it does have moments where a guitar solo comes in and gets heavier, though oddly I found these slightly less engaging than the rest of the track. I kinda like the more low-key electronic bits, despite that not at all being my vibe relatively speaking. But it worked for me. The trippy unusual feeling helped carry this track. I like when the track gets more intense with that drop in the sort of curious and playful kind of vibe. That is what makes this track so interesting to me. And it's not that it's bad with the guitar solo, no, not at all. I just found that to be the least interesting piece of the track. I guess I've mostly just talked about what's weird about this track and not what makes it good, but to me it's the weirdness that does make it good. It sounds great while also sounding really unusual, and that's cool. To Live in Darkness. Final Hazard? Final Hazard! Who the fuck is going around here gassing up matchups for fucking Final Hazard? Well, I applaud them, because this is a great track. It feels so satisfying, honestly, to right at the end of the Kingdom Hearts volume, finally find that Kingdom Hearts track that hits in all the right buttons for me. And I had that opinion like halfway through. The feeling of overwhelming dread and terror is perfect in this. It feels fast-paced like you'd expect from these, but the orchestral elements really take center stage to deliver an imposing boss battle track that is so stellar. Just wonderful overall. Dark Valentine. I can't tell if this one is coasting on the fact that it's Soul Calibur related, on the fact that it sounds like a Fate track. Generally, the vibe I get from this song really is like that of a Fate track. I can't explain it. Though I guess Fate's music is wildly varied, and I guess I also think this sounds like a Tsukihime track, but that's beside the point. This really vibes with me. It has a graceful elegance that goes without saying matches these two, while sounding like a character track you'd hear in a video game. Yeah, it's a bit repetitive in the first 2/3, but yeah, it sounds like a fighting game track, that it's kind of the same beat, but it oscillates over time back and forth between a few key moments that can simultaneously be easily looped, and also listened to as a single unbroken track without either feeling unnatural. That's pretty accurate to fighting game tracks. And then comes the final quarter, where it feels like it starts to go more into Soul Calibur territory, and it finishes the song's acquisition of my heart. It also starts to sound more like Fate and less like Tsukihime, but that's beside the point again. Very good track, and that last minute really is what stuck the landing for me. I'm a sucker for a good violin solo, even if it's technically not a solo, and it's not even dominating the entire minute, but it really works. It's wonderful. Petrifying Beauty. Rarely do I find Fate tracks with Brandon that I really fucking love, which might just be because I'm a picky cunt. But for as simple as this one really is, it managed to be the second one I loved after Guilt of the King, and not counting my own one. It's really just a somewhat repetitive and quite simple jazz rock track. Maybe it's a bit too cheerful at points, I can't speak for Boa, but Medusa is absolutely not the kind of character I associate with haha fun times. That's way more Setheno, I guess, amongst her family, and even then, that's just how she thinks, when in reality she acts more like a fucking sadist. But hey, ignoring how this track almost certainly does not really fit Medusa's character, it definitely is a very fun and vibing track. But for God's sakes, Brandon, who the hell told you to write Fate, space, Stay Night, and not Fate / Stay Night? Because I have words for them, and they all begin with expletives. Dream Buffet. Look, it's Kirby Dreamland theme mixed with Dragon Soul. I love it. Like, seriously, that's fucking perfect. That's actually perfect. It sounds as bubbly and fun as I'd expect, and just excels in that regard. As a fun, almost more of an eating competition sounding track. I just point to the fact that it's Dreamland's theme and Dragon Soul, and like, yeah, I love it. The end. Bye. Sins of the Father. I can't help but hear some of that chanting as saying, Keep your hands off my monkey. Anyway, Sins of the Father is bloody epic. I love the mixture of high-paced action and slow-paced bombacity. It conveys well how this is simultaneously a battle between two armies, and a battle between a giant man and a small man and a giant robot. It's basically King Kong versus Mechagodzilla, but also they have armies now. The guitar works really well as a nice balance between them, the point where the two sort of come together, because it seamlessly stays there between shifts from that high-paced synth to heavy chanting, themselves often coming together. If you take the chanting as representing the two main characters, you can argue that when they're together with the synth, it would be like the point where they're commanding their armies. And that sort of musical storytelling is always appreciated, even if I know almost nothing about these two, and just... the track's so catchy, man, it's so catchy. I listen to it over and over again, but like a lot of these I have to stop myself because I have a goddamn video to make, but I am probably going to listen to it again after I'm done with this video. My Inner Demons. Wow, a melodic metal track with chanting and a character that I love made it up here, what are the chances? My Inner Demons is excellent. It's catchy, it's got great instrumentation, I think the chanting is as always epic as fuck, and it really fits the demonic vibe of the matchup. The guitar always goes hard, and the melodic elements tie it all together in a nice way. How many more ways can I describe why I like tracks that are in this style? It's something we don't get often, but also not something that's rare. It's in the middle ground, and I love it basically all the time. Also, this has Rino Kumura, so like, based. Also, I love the moments where the piano takes center stage. Marked for Life. I'm not always satisfied when a matchup that I like gets a brand track, because I tend to have high hopes for a specific feel that the commissioner isn't always in line with. But in this case, oh boy! That sci-fi horror vibe is perfect. It feels like it can work for a fight just as much as it could work for just the track of a chase sequence where you're trying to escape while gunning down space, not zombies. It's really great, capturing the exact vibe I want, feeling really generally just groovy and pretty fun, while also having a horror feel and sounding kind of exactly like video game music in a way. Like, I know a lot of tracks with verses with a more gritty tone like this try to go for a cinematic feel. This one feels less cinematic and more video gamey, and I think that really works in its favor. From the start of this song, you know what it's about. It grabs you, it keeps you, it holds you. It never feels like it deviates too much, and also never feels like it gets stale and repetitive. It's a really, really good track. Now support the matchup. Heroic Connecting Hands. Hibiki Tachibana keeps having bangers with her tracks. Heroic Connecting Hands, like Symphonic Eruption, but not as good in my opinion, is a very simple one to explain the placement of. It almost immediately jumps into being a fucking banger. It's such a fun and simple track, and simple maybe isn't necessarily the right word, but it's simple in why I like it. It has moments, yeah, moments that are soft, moments that are more grandiose, moments that are just energetic, fast-paced fun, and they're all great. They all flow so goddamn well, I can't get enough of it. But it's just, it's so fun. Special mention to the guitar work in this one too, that really got me, it's fire. A Line in the Sand. I am typically not a fan of disco music, so naturally that means Brandon made me love a track in that style. This shit is funkalicious, to bring that term back into the fore of the internet commentary. It's so fucking good, I don't even know how to put it. Disco music tends to, for me, be very repetitive and boring. I tend to find it gets stale and dull almost immediately, but Brandon has managed to craft a track that is repetitive in a good way. It's groovy, and it flicks suddenly and amazingly between two different tunes that eventually come together as one, and that's sick. I don't know anything about Poo Poo Gear, but hot damn if this track doesn't feel so perfect for Joseph. It's got that fun action vibe he has, but importantly, feels like it perfectly matches a battle where you're constantly seeing wild and ridiculous stratagems and plans being conceived and pulled off on the fly, with Joseph endlessly using his wit to escape ridiculous scenarios by throwing even more ridiculous scenarios at them. That is so fucking good and works so well for me. What can I say, Brandon has made me love a track in a style I don't particularly like, by taking one of my least favourite elements of that style and turning it into one of the biggest boons the track has. In the meantime, the sky is blue. Arcane Starlights. It's the There Was solo, not even sugarcoating it. This track was already going to rank pretty damn high, but then Werewolf decided to go Super Saiyan God on my ass, and that pushed it all the way up here. This whole track has this amazing feeling of development from the original Little Shining Light. Hell, even the name reflects that. They began as Little Shining Lights, and they ended as Arcane Starlights. It feels like Little Shining Light is the track that represents the start of a dual collaboration series. Like, imagine there's a whole show that's a crossover. This is the track that plays at the end, in the final season after they've come so far. It still holds that feeling of hope and joy, but it's not the same. Little Shining Light was joy born of naivety and childishness, but Arcane Starlights is a joy born from maturity and understanding. It's a hope that is based around knowing how dark the world is. Hope that means more, that is stronger, that has more value. It really works to make this track feel like the end of a journey. I've never seen either show. I don't know if that's accurate to these two at all, but that's the feeling, the emotion I get from the instrumental. And when their solo begins, it just goes insane! I love the way that man shreds a guitar. It's something else, and it sounds so good in this. It sounds like the start was them reflecting on their journey. This solo is when they really get into it, when they use what they just reflected on to motivate them to keep going, to never give up and to stay standing. It feels so impactful and emotional and powerful. It works to deliver an amazing experience. That's what this track is. When combined with the first Little Shining Light, it turns the duology into an experience, and I love that. It's an exceptional track, and as always, these two fucking kill it together. Name a more iconic musical duo, I dare you. No, Caleb Hyles and Jonathan Young don't count, shut up. Scherzo of Snow? The Mirror Mirror trilogy of songs is my favourite sequence of songs in my favourite era of Ruby. So hearing pieces of that trilogy here in such beautiful manner really gave this song points to me, and I do mean beautiful. This track isn't epic or heavy or awesome or any of those other buzzwords. It's beautiful and graceful, while not at all sounding like it lacks in intensity. It sounds like a battle dance, as you'd expect. Something serene, calm, yet fierce and quick. It is a battle to the death, where one well-placed blow could end it all. And the two know that. It's a fight that gets your heart racing, but the main focus on the piano makes it sound very elegant and poignant. It's a gorgeous song. It uses the piano in a way that makes it sound like a fight, and honestly, I think Brandon did a track that focused on the violin in a similar way, and I loved it then too. I honestly cannot stop thinking about how gorgeous the song is. It evokes that emotion of wonder and admiration towards the beauty of its composition and instrumentation. That was so pretentious to say, but it works for me. Noble Savages. If Chima Forever and Gods of Combat gave the vibe of two royals fighting it out for their people in a ceremonial clash, Noble Savages gives the vibe of two heroes forced to fight to the death in a ritualistic death match. Which, after typing out this segment, I feel like, yeah, that was exactly the point. The way the chants and cheers are added in just brings the image of tribesmen and barbarians cheering in the seats of an arena watching these two fight. The drums feel diegetic, and the majority of the track feels that way too. There's this really nice usage of wind instruments that to me kind of sound like a didgeridoo if nothing else, that really worked into it. Not only are there people playing drums for the audience watching, but others are getting into it and they're playing instruments as well as the fight gets more intense. There's quieter moments where I can picture Conan and Tarzan just circling each other, not fighting, but watching each other's movements, trying to get a feel for each other's weaponry, their reach, their skill and technique, just standing off before a fight. And of course, it also starts with a build-up and a big horn being blown to signify the two fighters being out. It really gets across that vibe of two warriors forced to fight, let out of cages while the crowd cheers for their preferred fighter. To me, it sounds like Tarzan comes out first with the crowd cheering. I can see Tarzan looking around confused, unsure of what's happening because he's not used to it. Then, at the 34-second mark, the more dramatic and intense music comes in, which I picture as Conan stepping out, stalwart and completely sure of himself, knowing that he's going to kill this guy and escape. The two have that moment of staring each other down. The music quietens as the people forcing this fight to happen watch intrigued as to who's going to make the first move, who will attack first, which honestly probably will be Conan. But then when the fight gets going, it's that jungle, barbaric, intense vibe of a grounded fight that I want. This really works for me, and in my opinion, it is the peak of Brandon's tribal style tracks. They don't even come close to this one. Outfox the Dragon. Oh, fuck! This track is an amazing, very fittingly Japanese ninja vibing track that is needlessly heavy and epic. The chanting is maybe my favorite kind. The fast, repeated, single-syllable ones that are on the higher-pitched end, I can't explain it, and I will not try beyond that. It works so fantastically in conjunction with everything else to produce a sudden, out-of-nowhere thief of the number 2 spot right at the end. The instruments really worked amazingly together. It sounds so spectacular, all building up amazingly to the slower and more epic chanting. Like, you wouldn't immediately think for this matchup to make that the center focus, but I think it works amazingly given the history these characters have in their worlds and what they've gone through. It highlights more of the characters fighting than what's happening in the fight, and that's sick. I already like this matchup, but this track is just wow. This track almost makes me not want the matchup as an episode, because I almost feel like a track constrained to having to match up with an animation would not hit the emotion this track does. This track feels like it's taking me on an emotional journey, matching what these characters are experiencing as they battle, and what they've experienced over their lives, while sounding incredibly high energy and high scale, despite the relatively low scale of the characters. It's high scale in terms of emotion and feeling, but not physically. Just an incredible track. And my number one, probably not to many people's surprise, Dance with the Devil. There was a point looking back where I was thinking, this is good, might not get too high, and the last minute hit and the guitar went nuts and the choir in the background, the drums going all in, that sold me. I think I mentioned with the Samus vs. Zero track, I forget the name of it, that I noticed where it was and how high it was and had to constantly go back and check, do I really like it that much? And every time I went, oh, yeah, never mind, I remember exactly why I love it this much. This track had that. There were plenty of times I thought, do I really like that more than every other track? And then I re-listened to it and I was like, yeah, I do. Dance with the Devil is a really good track. It's very much like the fight itself, where it changes into different things out of nowhere, but manages to make it work. The piano is working overtime for the start, there's a choir coming in, the guitar and drums are always going hard, and has that opera rock that goes with the religious angel demon theming of both series, along with the insane bombasticness and grand epicness, and how ridiculous they are. It feels like a track I could hear in a boss battle for Devil May Cry 6, which absolutely is happening, please, I love Devil May Cry, or a boss in Bayonetta 2. As in, like, Bayonetta as well, not Bayonetta 2, the game specifically. I think around the middle 20-30 seconds the song loses me a bit. No, it doesn't. That's how I felt initially, but listening again, no, it fucking does not. The percussion takes over anyway and breaks that up, and it comes to the piano and guitar in full display, really open the... I don't know how to explain my interest in this track, because I feel like I'm just going over and over again. Like, I love this track. I adore this track. Doing these videos over a long span means the ranking will not always be the most accurate to my feelings by the end, because I'll forget exactly why something might rank high due to the number of things I'm listening to. But when I noticed nothing beat this out and had to double back to check if that was right for the last time, yes, was it right? I could gush over this track, but it would just be repetitive, like, I love this part, I love this part, I love this part, I love this instrument, I think this instrument was used amazingly, I think this is great, I think this is a great usage of that motif. There's nothing to say beyond, I love this track, it is one of my favorites. Do I love it more than Devil May Howl? That's a fucking hard question. Probably. I love Devil May Howl though. Oh, it's hard. But maybe. It might have beaten that out. So yes, that was my instrumental ranking of volume... I think we're on volume 5. And it was a great volume. I'm really happy with it. My first time commissioning Brandon. Twice in one volume even. Maybe I'll commission in volume 6, who knows? Me, him, not you. You don't know. But, yeah. That was the volume 5 ranking. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm really hungry after recording all that. Have a good one, fellas.